What I want to do is I want to talk about three, and I'm going to call them emerging trends. And I just want to kind of tee you up, and I want to get your thoughts on three trends. One of them is the changing dynamics in the workplace, the changing generational dynamics. What we're talking about is boomers retiring in mass numbers,
Yes.
being replaced with folks in part from a millennial generation, a Gen Z generation, and that means that they look different, and they've always looked different, and they might act different, but they've always acted different. But you know what the real deal is that they want different things
Right.
out of their job.
Right. Yep. Totally. So baby boomers, 30% reduction in baby boomers in the workforce since 2021. So we've had a stunning drop. It really accelerated retirements through that period. And then you saw a lot of secondary incomes leave the workforce, right? So you had a lot of wives or spouses that decided to drop out, and they're all coming back at the same time as well. So you've got this combination of things where the workforce has all of a sudden really become younger, like faster than normal, because we had so many boomers leave the workforce, and you've got a lot of kids entering the workforce right now, coming out of college or repurposing over into another job. So it's an exciting time, but it requires many different things from an HR function.
Nowadays, it looks a little different. And you told me a statistic that blew me away about the percent of people today, younger generation, that have decided they don't want kids. And it all is part of this just wanting different things in life.
Yeah, 44% of kids or couples between 25 and 35 have decided they'll never have kids. So what that means is they're going to be two-income families. They're going to be financially strong, and they're going to want flexibility to travel and do things. So companies are going to have to shift gears a little bit. And we're seeing that pressure, for example, on PTO policies. You know, the days of giving 2 weeks of vacation per year are beginning to fall into you got to give 3 weeks or maybe even 4 weeks at some point, more of a European model.
So let's move on to emerging trend number two, and that is artificial intelligence. And some of you are saying, dude, that's not emerging. We've had that for a while. That is true. However, over the course of the last year or so, more and more companies and more industries are beginning to use artificial intelligence in the recruitment process.
Right.
Let me give you one statistic here. In SHRM's 2024 Talent Trends Report, and I'm reading, it says only 1 in 4 companies are using artificial intelligence to support HR-related tasks, but that stat is growing quickly. So what are you seeing out there? Are people still trying to get used to this, or are people really starting to go after it?
Well, I think like anything else, I think the younger generations are really comfortable with that and adopting that at a very high rate. And I think, you know, older Americans that are in the workforce are just trying to sort of learn it, right? It's interesting. The other day I had a situation where I had a person who's getting ready to interview for a very technical job, and he was struggling to be prepared for that job. I said, well, let's get on ChatGPT and let's ask them, what are the 5 questions you're likely to be asked? And it came back and produced these 5 questions that were amazingly good for this very technical discipline that he could then be prepared to have as an answer. And he called me after he had the interview and said, heard they asked like 3 of those 5 questions.
Is that amazing?
I mean, isn't that amazing? So I think HR functions, it's going to help a lot in talent acquisition, but I also think it's going to help out with little things like, you know, having help writing something that you send out to all the employees, you know, making sure it's not misspelled or it's presented in a sensitive way. So, I mean, I know at HTI, we're all of our departments are using it heavily. And I would say year over year, we're probably 30% committed into AI in all of our groups, and that'll go up by the end of the year.
Good stuff. Let's move on to emerging trend number 3. Now, this is emerging in a way, but we're talking about a controversial topic here, folks. We're talking about DEI right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Over the past decade, I would say, companies have really begun to invest in DEI within their organizations, whether that be in the form of training or just making it part of corporate goals or that type of things.
Right.
But as we know, there's been a lot of change here over the last few weeks regarding it. As a matter of fact, DEI efforts at the federal level have at least been paused. We're not sure exactly where all that's going to go, but we do know that we're heading down a road that we've not been to before.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think right now, I mean, the word DEI politicized. So when we use the word, it evokes an emotion. You know, it's interesting. Nikki Haley, I was just at a luncheon where she was speaking at, and this question came up with her, and she was talking about DEI nationally. And one of the things she was talking about was she likened that CEOs should look at Dolly Parton as a model for how they should show up with their customers and employees. And her point was that everybody loved Dolly Parton, but nobody knew what Dolly Parton stood for politically. And so I think what companies have to do is how do we, a good company should want all of their employees to feel at home and comfortable. So if we keep that premise of anybody that comes into our workforce, whether they're black or white, whether they're male or female, whether they're straight or trans, whatever it happens to be, is the person capable of being comfortable in the workplace? But I think maybe being careful about sort of the politics of that and what leadership does to sort of advance the voice of the company. I think you'll see some changes in that regard, because I think maybe there was an overcompensation on that on the part of a lot of companies over the last 10 years. And I think you'll see that maybe cycle back a little bit to stay true to its purpose, which is, if we hire somebody, how can we make them feel welcome and heard?
Yeah.
I want all my employees to feel comfortable.
That's right.
And so I'll put my political views forward because of that. So yeah, I think that's what you'll see happen more.